Yesterday's game was a hard watch. Now, a lot of people usually hate referees and they usually come to their defense. Since last season, especially Arsenal people were always on PGMOL, like, cut down on these referees. They are ruining the game. They are ruining the beautiful game. And I was always on their defense, saying that, refereeing is hard. You have to make all these decisions. But then, yesterday, really reminded me the psychology of a referee. And I feel that referees, sometimes they usually come into the game knowing that this is a big team and this is a small team, that we expect this team to win and this team to lose. We expect this team to make all the fouls and this team to be, to score the goals. We expect this team to get the penalties. We expect these teams to get the corners. And when they do that, it influences how they make the decisions. Like, for instance, yesterday, and I'm really sad. And I think it's one of the things that is bad with football, because if you are coming into the game with predetermined decisions, that when a person, like the same scenario when somebody fell, a player was playing for Man United, suddenly, just immediately, even VAR, 1 minute, like not even a minute, seconds, everybody has agreed it's a penalty. The same situation, and especially it's a very bad situation. Just Konate on another person hugging him from behind with using two hands, and it goes, and the referee just assumes, like, I didn't see. We go to the VAR and it's like, where's the light? We are not seeing. We are not seeing. Like, how does it happen always? How does it happen that some of the teams just have decisions on their side? Be it penalty, be it red. I'm so sure if Anthony Gordon yesterday was playing for Liverpool and he had made that tackle, it will just be yellow card and everybody will forget. But because he's playing for Newcastle against Liverpool, it's yellow card, and then they're going to the VAR, and suddenly the VAR, now they're saying, now the light is everywhere, and then they're saying, hey, it's not even a gay red, it has to be a straight red. That's sad. But aside from that, yesterday game, it is bad. Oh, the good thing. The good thing is that, Liverpool are depending on last minute's goal. They did that against Bournemouth. They have done that against Newcastle. And you know why they're scoring these late goals? It's because when you compare the bench or the second team for Bournemouth, for Newcastle against Liverpool, it just shows that Liverpool have a huge bench. Like, they remove somebody and who do they bring? Chiesa. They remove somebody and who do they bring? Gumoa. Of course, we sold him. He wasn't as good in the past. They take somebody out, and who do they bring in? At the bench, they have, like, particular people who have PL experience, who are more talented than Bournemouth, than Newcastle. Like, if Newcastle are bringing, Tonali out, they're bringing another 70-year-old, and there's a huge shift in quality compared to what Liverpool does. And that means when they're making the four subs or the fifth sub, and these people are making the fifth sub, there's a huge shift in quality to the side of Liverpool. Now, if they get a team that has the same quality wise in the bench, such as Man City, such as Arsenal, such as Chelsea, such as Spurs to some extent, they're not going to get those 3 goals at the end of the game. They're not going to get that additional 2 goals at 96 minutes, because sometimes uh, how these teams get, it's just always like sometimes even with the Chelsea game against Crystal Palace, there were injuries. But then it's 4 minutes, 6 minutes additional time. When it's Liverpool and they have drawn, it's 11 minutes, it's 15 minutes. Like, what's wrong? What's wrong with this league? And that's why I'm asking that. Sometimes if referees are going into games with predetermined decisions that this is a bigger team, we should always, always, always be hyping up Chelsea as a bigger team. That's what will save us from having all these decisions going against us. That's what Man City used to do. It was just Man City is a good team. It doesn't make all these faults. It concedes. It creates chances, and the oppositions are always trying to fail their strikers. They are always trying to fail their defenders. They are always trying to fail, and it always like that. Such that when you're playing for a game that's 50-50, for a challenge that is 50-50, it always goes in the Man City side. And now, for the 2 years, it has always been going into the Liverpool side. We need to hype Chelsea as much as we can to tell them that, you know what, if Estevao gets the ball, he's already fouled. If Palmer gets the ball, he's already fouled. That's the only thing that will help us with this type of referees, because they have always gone against us for some time now. Now, the bad thing is that Liverpool are getting all these points in the difficult games. And it's hard. You see, Bournemouth is not a very, very low league team. And it's one of the games which they should have drawn. With Newcastle, it's one of the games that they should have drawn, especially at St. James Park. Now, if these teams are getting all these points, it will just count at the end of the league. Now we'll be in 20-something game. And now we are remembering that, you know what? Liverpool are just ahead of us because they won that game against Newcastle, which they should have drawn. That game against Bournemouth, if they had drawn, they shouldn't be where they are right now. And that is the bad thing. That is the bad thing that is happening with Liverpool and again with Arsenal, because Arsenal have, all these games against Man United. Now they're going to face Liverpool. And now that will be something like a close game. But then, if these teams are getting all these points against Man City, against Newcastle, against Bournemouth, you expect at the further end of the season, now they'll be now meeting West Ham, now meeting Leeds, now meeting Burnley, now meeting all these, bottom table league teams. And it will be difficult to catch them when they got the points at earlier part of the season, which is very bad. Now, and this is also one of the weird thing about that game, is that first is when you look at Newcastle, and they started a game without a striker. They had Anthony Gordon against two huge giants in Konate and Van Dijk. And they were struggling. They brought in Osula and he scores. And you start. This is what football is. This is what I told Maresca. This is what I used to tell Pochettino, that you can be a good baller. You can be a good baller. Like, you can know how to play the ball. You can know how to pass the ball. You can know how to shoot the ball. But then, if you're a winger, sometimes it just needs certain qualities. Like, you need to run quicker. You need to know how to use some spaces. Like, you have a lot of space, you can do your shit. But if you are taken at the center of the game, sometimes you realize that the qualities that you are so good at, running into spaces, dribbling, they don't work at the center of the field. And you influencing or making, the team better, playing at that point, doesn't work. Like, you need somebody who has the same qualities that are needed to play as a center forward, to play as a center forward, even if you don't consider him as good as much as a baller. If you consider, oh, he has this kind of, even when we had Lukaku, some people are saying, you know what, how Lukaku catches the ball, his first touch is so poor. But then you put Lukaku there and you take somebody who has a better touch, who has a better first touch, who has a better, and you put them in the center forward, you'll always realize that Lukaku will give a better output than this guy, because there are so many qualities, especially just playing, boarding people around, having that immense width, height, uh, knowing when to turn, knowing when to push people, knowing when to how to use your hands, knowing how to, stand your ground. That are very important. Just playing within a confined space. That are very important for a center forward at that point. And it's not just a center forward. Sometimes we usually like to change a lot of things, taking rest James. And I say this, I've always said that sometimes I'm usually wrong, but not always. Most of the times I'm usually right. When we say like bring Reece James at the mid, but then you realize that the qualities that sometimes are needed in the mid, they're when Reece James is there and you are holding the ball, like you are passing around, you are having fun, you are doing all these things, it's usually good. But then when it's like box to box, people running out, ball coming from up, down, you need to fail people, you need to turn, and it just becomes quicker, faster, a little bit crazy for this. And it's the same way for every player. When you take a winger, you put him in attacking mid. When you take an attacking mid, you put him in a striker. When you take a midfielder, you don't know. It just sometimes make the player to not perform as they should, to not give the same output as they should. This goes to Man United, this goes to Chelsea especially, this goes to now Newcastle, that it's very, very important to put the players, especially your best players, in their best positions. That's how that's how you win, that's how you dominate. That's it. Anyway, that's about it from yesterday game. Anyway, if you are still here, subscribe and let's meet in the other video.